bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right. Good evening, Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. How you doing? Today's Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. For KJCR, the Game Changer, and UNX Networks, Race Hobbs. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. May the 4th be with you. Tonight, we welcome very special guest. Richard Dolan is here for the interview. That's right. Tomorrow night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Yeah. It's always a big build-up to Thursday night, and that's going down tomorrow. Fader night, open lines all night long. Coming up, I'll be speaking at the X Conference, May 13th and 14th. I'll be speaking on Friday night. This is an online-only event. For full info, go to unxnetwork.com. I'll also be hosting Disclosure Fest June 18th, 2022, on Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'll be hosting at the Los Angeles State Historic Park in downtown Los Angeles, California. DisclosureFest.org for tickets and info. Then I'll be in Egypt with Billy Carson this October. Space is very limited. I want you to visit forbiddenknowledge.com and come celebrate my birthday in Egypt in October in Luxor. Links for everything is in the description box below and throughout social media and over on our website, jimmychurchradio.com. You can follow me on Twitter at jchurchradio. At jchurchradio. Follow me right there. Sandbox is hashtag F2B on Twitter. I was just over in the chat room on YouTube right before the show, and everybody's over there already causing trouble. I want to thank Lou and Christina and UFO Jane and Jazz Shaw. Great conversation that we had today over on Lou's show for the premiere of Skinwalker Ranch. I think it's season 3, and the premiere was last night. I have not seen the series, any of it, and it was great for me to be there to review something that I haven't seen, in that I was there to learn, and I learned a lot. It was so much fun today hanging out with all of them, and I want to thank Lou for that, and I want to get a Lou hoodie, even though it's about to hit 110 degrees, and we're in the middle of the summer here in the Mojave Desert, but I want to get me a Lou hoodie. Let's get to the breaking news. The big breaking news of the year just went down today. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has officially announced this year's inductees: Eminem, Dolly Parton, Duran Duran, Lionel Richie, Pat Benatar, the Eurythmics, and Carly Simon. All of them will join the class of 2022 in the performers category. That's not all. Additionally, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Judas Priest will receive Musical Excellence Awards. Now, that's about as close as Judas Priest has gotten. And you know what's really weird? Over the weekend, leading up to this breaking news today, I listened to British Steel, Judas Priest. I listened to Point of Entry, Judas Priest. I listened to Screaming for Vengeance, Judas Priest. And I listened to Unleashed in the East, their live album. And I did those 4 albums back to back and just went through the Judas Priest thing this weekend, along with a serious dose of Dokken. That's another story right there. Okay. All right. So Judas Priest is halfway there. Good for them. Okay. When Apollo 15 and 17 missions returned to Earth with pieces of the moon in 1971 and 1972, some of the samples were deliberately set aside for the future. Flash forward now a half a century later, and these samples are finally being studied. In 2019, 9 teams of researchers were selected to analyze the untouched rocks and soil brought back from the Apollo missions. Some of the vacuum-sealed samples have never been opened on Earth before. Others have been carefully stored in a freezer since their arrival over 50 years ago. A special facility had to be built in Maryland at the Goddard Space Flight Center to house the lunar samples, and it took 4 years to set it up. But finally, researchers can analyze the long-kept treasures from the Apollo missions. I will keep everybody updated on this. Now, check this out. The plunging water level in Lake Mead. Lake Mead, by the way, the largest reservoir in the United States, has been taken over by drought. It revealed a disturbing discovery over the weekend, and it's one of the craziest things I've read in a long time. The reveal was a body in a barrel. Investigators believe the body was likely a murder victim who died from a gunshot wound, killed sometime in the 1970s or early 1980s, based on the clothing and footwear the victim was found with. Now, you know what they're doing next? DNA, and they're going to try to identify who was in the barrel. And when they do, I'll let you know. Well, an old Russian rocket motor broke up in orbit back on April 15th. The U.S. Space Force's 18th Space Defense Squadron tweeted yesterday, generating a new cloud of space debris. 16 pieces of space junk associated with the event are currently being tracked. Known as object number 32398, it was a motor from a space tug that had helped deliver 3 Russian GLONASS satellites to orbit back in 2007. Well, Canada has partnered with the United States to create the Lunar Gateway Space Station, and that's going to be orbiting the moon, and it will prep for missions to Mars. Now, while crime isn't common in space yet, now Canada will be ready if it does happen, because the Canadian government recently proposed a change to its legal code, which allows it to prosecute crimes committed in space. The lawmakers passed an amendment allowing prosecution of crimes on the moon. Yeah. Well, this went down last night in Los Angeles. Dave Chappelle was attacked during his show at the Hollywood Bowl right here in Los Angeles, California. The man who tackled Chappelle, identified as Isaiah Lee, 23 years old, had a backpack on. They had the entire front of the stage blocked off with security, right? But somehow he got through with a knife that was disguised as a gun. How did that get through metal detectors, right? Well, he's now in custody. And he was admitted to a hospital, and they said he sustained injuries, but not in the altercation. In other words, he got touched up by Chappelle's security, as he should have. Chappelle had finished his act and was exiting the stage when Lee, who was part of the audience, jumped on the stage and tackled Chappelle to the ground. The video is crazy. Now, video's very limited. You know why? Not only the heavy security there, but you're not allowed to videotape. So all of your cell phones, when you get to the Hollywood Bowl for the Chappelle show, they give you a security case that locks, and you got to put your phone in the case, and it's locked. You cannot use your phone during the show. Babysitter's calling. There's an emergency. Can't do it. Yeah, it's pretty strange. Well, anyway, so there's no cell phone video. There's very limited video, and it's out there. It's pretty terrifying, actually, that this guy broke through. On this day in history, OTD, 1994, Harry Cohen, a member of the UK Parliament, says on the floor, Parliament is in session. And he says on the floor, he says, quote, May the 4th is an appropriate date for a defense debate. My researcher, who is a bit of a wit, said that it should be called National Star Wars Day, end quote. Well, the rest is, well, you know, as they say, history. May the 4th be with you. Fader fact. Love this. Talk about a conspiracy. Are you ready? Fader fact. The Loreland Tobacco Company was successfully sued. They lost. They were sued for sending company vans into housing projects to give out free Newport cigarettes to black children in the late 1960s. And that is your Fader fact. Tonight, very special guest Richard Bleepin' Dolan is here. He's here tonight for the interview. Yeah, the interview. It's going down tonight. Tomorrow night, Fader night. Open lines all night long. Now it's time for me to hit this River Moon Coffee, George Lynch. Man, that was George's best hairstyle right there. That one with the blonde and the that raccoon. That's just awesome. I wonder where that guitar is today. Is that the original Tiger? That's what it looks like. George Lynch. I'm not going to say anything. He might be on the show. I'm just saying. Here in the studio. I'm just saying it might happen. Okay? All right? It's going to be cool if it does. I'm going to sit here, George. I want to go pick out a guitar. Play something for the Fadernauts. Yeah. All right. Now, as everybody knows, I got the new Fender Mini Strat. It's hanging up on the far wall over there, and I know everybody wants to see it. I'll save that for tomorrow night on Fader night, and I got a couple of other guitar surprises, or at least one. At least one. There's more, but you know, you gotta space it out. Can't do it all at once. But yeah, we'll do that tomorrow night. All right, River Moon Coffee, rivermoonwellness.com. You know what I did today? I sent some coffee to a friend, Fade to Black Blend, and I thought to myself, this is how cool life is. So I thought to myself today, I said, okay, I could take some of my stock. You know, I've got a cabinet full of Fade to Black Blend. Do I take that out, box that up, take it to the UPS store, right? Have them put a label on it, drive, or is there an alternative? And yes, there is. I went to Amazon today and bought my own coffee, Fade to Black Blend, and had it shipped to somebody. How cool is that? I mean, there was some satisfaction involved with that. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Very weird. It's a very weird sensation to go through. But I did that today. And now the question is to who? You'll never know. rivermoonwellness.com. Visit the Amazon store. You know how I did it myself. I literally, River Moon Coffee, right there in Amazon. River Moon Coffee. That sounds cool. River Moon Coffee popped right up. Right there, right at the top, fade to black blend. Right there at the top of the right there, popped right up. Too easy to do. So go visit Amazon. Type it in. River Moon Coffee. I just ordered this keyboard that I have here. It's really cool. It's nice. And but I've had it for a number of years. It's really nice. But I decided to get one of those retro, which are now, it's now-tro now, but it's used to be retro. It's now-tro. An antique mechanical computer keyboard with the click-clackety keys, and that looks like a typewriter. It's all steampunked out. So I can't wait to get that, man. Can't wait to get that. All right. Where am I at? Rivermoonwellness.com, and the links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. All right. Now check this out. I'm going to be speaking. Wow, that was weird. Something just moved on my ceiling. One of the acoustic tiles literally just went pop down. What if it falls during the show? What if it keeps going? I need to push it back up. That was weird. It caught my eye. Okay. I'm going to be speaking at the UNX conference May 13th and 14th. And one of the things I'm going to be talking about is Oumuamua. And I'm going to talk about the James Webb, which also we'll be covering with Christina Gomez this Thursday. These are some of my favorite things to talk about on the show because I do so much research into this. The size of the universe, the expansion of the universe, and, Einstein and the turnaround on things, static universe to an expanding universe, to a universe that is increasing its speed of expansion now. Space is expanding faster than the speed of light. It's a crazy, crazy amount of research, and I love talking about this. And now, after nearly 13.8 billion years of nonstop expansion, researchers are now saying that the universe could soon grind to a standstill and then slowly start to contract. Now, this isn't anything new. This was always a theory that was put out there. But new research in that, was it infinitely expanding, or would it expand and then eventually gravity take over, and then boom, we have a reversal of the Big Bang, right? Okay, and that's always been out there. New research published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences suggests now that it's about to change. In the new paper, 3 scientists attempt to model the nature of dark energy, which we are just now trying to figure out. It's mysterious. It's a force. And it seems to be causing the universe to expand faster and faster. And all of this based on past observations, in cosmic expansion. But in the team's model, dark energy is not a constant force of nature. They are saying it's an entity called quintessence, which can decay over time. The researchers found that even though the expansion of the universe has been accelerating for billions of years, the force of dark energy may be weakening. Now, according to their model, the acceleration of the universe could rapidly end within the next 65 million years. Then, 25 million years later, the universe would stop expanding altogether. That's just in 100 million years. And instead of expanding, it stops, and then slow contraction. And the slow contraction it could be a couple of billion years, right? But it would be the death of the universe. And then they're saying, right, I'm down to nothing, and then possibly a rebirth. That this would do a hard reset of time and space. Now, they're saying that this could happen actually fairly quickly. And the co-author of the study, his name is Paul Steinhardt. He's the director of the Princeton Center of Theoretical Science of Princeton University in New Jersey. And this is where it gets funky for me, because the model hinges on past observations, right? And I get that, right? All right. But the past observations are just on expansion. And because the present nature of dark energy in the universe is such a misunderstood, nobody really knows. It's a mystery, right? So nobody knows. We can't see it. That's why it's called dark energy. We can't measure it, and the predictions in this paper are currently impossible to test. You can't do it. It's hard enough to measure anything in physics. So for now, this is just a thought experiment to me, right? It's just a theory. Anybody can have a theory. Now, since the 1990s, scientists have understood that the expansion of the universe is speeding up. We know this. I talk about it nearly every single day on this show. The space between galaxies is widening faster and faster, right? Except for between us and Andromeda. That's another story. Scientists named the mysterious source of this acceleration dark energy. All right. And that's ominous just right there, right? Dark energy. You can't see it. It's invisible. And it's the opposite of gravity. It's pushing instead of pulling. Doesn't make any sense, right? It's actually pushing galaxies farther apart rather than normal gravity, which is sucking everything together. The paper actually suggests that the accelerated expansion of the universe is already slowing down. I don't know where they get that from. I don't. It's just a theory. But how can they measure that it's slowing down? All right. Their calculations suggest that within 65 million years, that acceleration would stop altogether. Right? And that's it. And then after that, it's going to stop. Dark energy is going to trip out. Instead of becoming pushing, it's going to be attractive. It's going to be attractive. That dark energy is going to do a flip-flop, and then everything's going to get sucked in. It's going to contract. In other words, after nearly 14 billion years of growth, we are going to start to shrink. I read about this stuff every single day, and I love new theories, and I love new ideas. This is just a little bit too radical for me, because according to the team's model, it would take a few billion years of slow contraction for the universe to reach about half the size as it is today. The observable universe, it's 90 billion light years across. And it's going to be half that size in just a couple of billion years? Say what? Right? All the matter. Now, this is the thing. When we talk about something from nothing, right? That everything came from nothing. It was just a accident, boom, blows up, gases get crazy, particles go nuts, dust accumulates, gravity gets sucked together, hydrogen and things and stars are formed, and galaxies, that all came from literally nothing, right? And that everything that formed is going to contract back into nothing. I don't see how that's possible. Now, if you think about it, from there, two things could happen. Either the universe contracts until it collapses in on itself, right? Ending everything as we know it, or the universe contracts just enough to return to a state similar to original conditions. Right? Now, is it possible? Okay, so let's just go with this. Dark energy is pushing. It's the opposite of gravity. Okay, so let's accept that. And that it's going to get to a point where it's going to stop pushing, and then dark energy is going to flip-flop, and it's going to turn back into gravity and suck everything back in. Will it flip-flop again? Will there be an area of stability right? Where the universe contracts and then just stops and stays where it is. Is it possible that dark energy will flip-flop again and the universe turns around and expands again? Is there no balance in the middle, right? Pressure, and that everything just sucks back in on top of itself? That includes our star system and then the Milky Way and every galaxy, trillions of galaxies, all compressed back into what? Into what? A giant rock? There's space in between all atoms. So does it just continue to contract into just a massive? It's like the craziest paper I've ever read. Now, everything is a theory. Okay. Right now, they haven't presented any information, any data that the expansion is slowing down. If it is indeed slowing down and this gets measured, we got to go back to Edwin Hubble and what happened in 1922, proven in 1928 when the papers were first released. And then, of course, in 1995, 96, 97, and 98, 4 years of research about the accelerating expansion of the universe. It's crazy times that we live in. And that's why I do this show. It's just a quest for knowledge. Let's do this ride together. This is Fade to Black. Speaking of knowledge, that's tonight's show. Richard Dolan is with us. Richard Dolan is here tonight. It is The Interview. All of that coming up after this short break. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer and UnX networks. We'll be right back with Richard Dolan after this short break. Stay with me.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Do you have an interest in the paranormal? Then you'll love the unxnetwork.com. The X is your streaming audio and video for everything supernatural, strange, and mysterious, like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and so much more. From hosts like Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and Christina Gomez. Visit the unxnetwork.com show page for a complete list of all the paranormal programs you'll find on the X. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates at KUNXDB. Follow our Facebook group, UNX Network. Find the podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Audible, and Apple Podcast. It's time. It's new. It's the X.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Tonight, Richard Dolan is with us. Tonight's the interview. Yeah. Richard, one of the world's leading researchers and writers on the subject of UFOs, he truly believes that they constitute the greatest mystery of our time. He completed his graduate work at the University of Rochester, where he studied U.S. Cold War strategy, European history, and international diplomacy. He also studied at Alfred University and Oxford University. He's the author of UFOs in the National Security State, AD After Disclosure, UFOs in the 21st Century Mind, and his latest, The Alien Agendas, a speculative analysis of those visiting Earth. His weekly Fireside Chat video podcast with his latest thoughts is over at Richard Dolan Members. He is currently featured on several television series and documentaries, including Ancient Aliens, Hangar One, the UFO Files, and of course, that new spectacular feature film, The Observers. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Richard Dolan. Richard, good evening, my man. How you doing?
Hey, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on here. I like our new format. We got the little video thing happening here.
It's about time. It's about time. You know, all those years of interviews started out with no video, right?
Right.
And then
right.
and then right, and then it was just my mug, and nobody got to see you but me. And
no one has ever seen what I've looked like until just now. I don't think I've ever done a video thing. So thank you, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is completely awesome. Okay, so
by the way, you were getting your astronomy groove going in that last segment. That was kind of interesting. You had me laughing. I don't know which one of us was stoned, either you or me, because I'm thinking you're talking about rewinding the universe's clock in 65 million years. First of all,
not me.
You lost me. You lost me like 2 minutes in. I'm like, I can't even follow what this guy's talking about.
Yeah, but, I know. I read this paper today, Richard, and I'm thinking to myself, how crazy is this? You know, when you have a peer-reviewed paper like that from Princeton University and throwing this wild theory out there that we're slowing down already.
It is wild. I don't think I believe it. Yeah. Well, who am I? Yeah, I'm an astronomical expert. But it just seems a little not plausible, because our universe, by all the measurements, I think is 13.8.
13.8. Yeah, let's go.
8 billion years old. Yeah. So that's 65 million years is like a sliver. So by their calculations, we just happen to be almost exactly right now at the turning point of the universe. Something just doesn't seem right to me.
It
doesn't seem right. That's all.
If there is, okay, so let's stop and examine what you just said. And this is a perfect starting point for the interview. Is this?
Yeah, I still don't know what that's going to be about.
Yeah, I know, right. And we already passed up the good stuff. So don't think that I've lost my ability to have memory. So we know what the opening question is going to be, but let's circle back to that since you've taken control of the interview. By the way, I'm still the host, Richard. Yeah, I'm still the host. I know what you're thinking. Is this Edwin Hubble in 1922 stopped Albert Einstein in his tracks? Albert Einstein stated that the universe was static. And that was nothing's moving, right? It's static. And that was Einstein, and he published his papers in 05 and 15, 16, 17 in the 1900s. 1922, Edwin Hubble, right here, Mount Wilson. He's up there with his telescope, and he sees that the universe is moving. And so he went public about this, and Einstein was like, nope, everything's static. So
they had it out in the back room. Not many people know about that whole thing.
They had it out. So Einstein has to go up to the observatory on Mount Wilson, which had the biggest telescope in the world at that time. Einstein looks through himself and looks at the plates, the photographs that were taken. Sure enough, blue shift, right? Something's going on. The stars have moved. Galaxies have moved. Well, anyway,
isn't it red shift?
It depends on what direction.
Well, if they're going away from you, I think it's red shift.
Right. Red or blue. So the point being, Einstein had to say, I was wrong. And this was,
back then they had to eat the straw hats way worse.
Man,
were not. You don't want to eat those.
It was a gnarly thing. So it was so radical that it took almost 7 years for Hubble's paper to get published and accepted.
Wow.
Okay, so
you've really been going into this. I'm quite impressed.
Yeah. So 1928 to 1995-ish. The universe is expanding. In 1995, 96, 97, 98, 4 teams of researchers, they all get together, they're looking at this, and they find out that, it's expanding, but it's accelerating. And that at the edges of everything, space is expanding at the speed of light or faster, right?
This is what we have believed for a while now.
Now, all of this, Richard, is measured. That's a difference, right? This isn't a theory. This is measured, and now it's accepted. That's where we are today. That's why this paper today being published saying that we've already started to slow down and that 65 million years from now, things are going to, hit the brakes and then start to reverse. You need to have the data to back that up. Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like a stretch, but we will see.
Now, this is okay. Let's just get this out of the way.
Yes, sir.
Last song you listened to today.
Oh, yes.
What was it?
I don't know the name of it. So most of the day we had a Pandora station playing bossa nova.
Oh,
so Stan Getz, Astrud, Gilberto, the girl from Ipanema, one of our all-time faves. Tracy and I had that on, but then we switched it out onto some classical Spanish guitar, which was awesome stuff. And I just don't know the name of the last tune I heard, but it was great. It's like, how do you beat classical Spanish guitars?
You don't actually. The answer is
you don't. So it was wonderful. I just don't know the name of it. And had I remembered that I would be doing this with you, I would have taken the tune down. But alas.
Okay. All right. I'm buying what you're selling. Going back to bossa nova before we move forward, because I want to stay on the subject that we're on. Frank Sinatra's album with Joe Beam.
I don't think I know that one. And I love Sinatra. I don't think I know that.
They do The Girl from Ipanema.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I bet he did a great job with it.
Well, it's Joe Beam's song.
Did everything well except Hey Jude. He didn't do that one well. That was a big miss. He should have passed on doing the Beatles. It's not a good sound. But he did everything else superb. The
thing is with Frank, if you go back to where he was at that point, dude was king of the world.
Totally.
So whatever he thought about that day, whatever was on it, he could do. So one morning he woke up and said, "Hey, Jude,
I'm hip. Hey,
I'm hip.
Peace.
I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
He
probably. I did hear it once years ago, and I just laughed. But I bet he did a great Girl from Ipanema.
Oh, it's amazing.
I don't think I've heard that.
Well, after the show tonight, there is on Frank Sinatra's TV show. It's in black and white. Him and Joe Beam doing The Girl from Ipanema live. Okay. And it's, man, I'm telling you right now, and so they ended up doing a whole album of Bossa Nova together. It is truly great. It's magnificent. I mean, it
was the rage in the mid 60s. It really, it made a big breakthrough, made a lot of money.
I'm going to go on the record. You got Bach, you got Beethoven, Vivaldi, Elvis, and Frank and Joe Beam. It's like that. It's that great.
I would have a slightly different ranking in there, but yeah, that's good stuff right there.
Now,
that's why we all have the different tastes. That's what makes it so great.
What is it that we know? And the question is framed around what we were just talking about, that man has the ability to not only think about the small life, right, and contemplate consciousness, but we can also think about the great, the biggest of the big, the universe. And as far as I know, monkeys don't do this. They might, right? But as far as I know, dogs can't, right? A bass swimming in a pond can't, but we can. Right. And how significant is that? And how much do we really know?
I'd like you to know that you actually are asking the same question that was put about 400 years ago by the great genius Blaise Pascal in his Pensées. And I recommend that to anyone. That's just amazing stuff. But he talked about the same thing. He said, like, we humans, we're kind of in between, like the greatest of the big and the tiniest of the little. He said, and we don't really know much about either. Where if you go down into the most infinitesimally small atom of nature, he's writing around the year 1600, and he said, we really don't understand that stuff. And similarly, the distance between us and that is every bit as great as the distance between us and the greatest of the great. Beyond the greatest reaches of this universe, whatever that is. He knew a lot less scientifically, people knew, than we do now, but he had the right idea. He's like, we're at this, we're kind of in the middle, and we're able to get knowledge of certain things about the nature of our existence, but he said there's just so much. He suspected that we'll just never know. And I agree with that fundamentally. I mean, we have learned a lot since that, and what you're asking is essentially the same thing. It's like, what can we really know? Do the other animals ask the same questions? I think the answer is they do not. I think we're unique in that way, yeah. But for us, it's only been a recent thing. I'm deeply, deeply into the history of the human species and trying to understand that. I mean, part of it was appearing on the TV show Ancient Aliens. I mean, I've always been interested in ancient history, but they put me on Ancient Aliens. And, I'm constantly asking, like, all right, is there this big hole in our ancient history? What are we really from? What's our actual origins? And I think about this a lot. What's interesting is that most paleoanthropologists today believe that human language, like the articulated language that we have, sophisticated language, let's say, is not that old. It might be 50,000 years ago, maybe 60,000 years, but they don't believe much longer than that. And I think they're probably right. I've got my own reasons for thinking that. So if that's the case, you can't really have sophisticated concepts without some kind of articulated language to express those concepts, to think abstractly, for example, which is really what all of this is. So 50,000 years is not a long time. And certainly I don't think any of the other animals that have evolved on Earth have that ability. So now I think that there are other beings in this universe that have that ability. But in terms of what we can learn, hey, we're only a few thousand years out of, little huts and horses that pull wooden carts. We've only just gotten out of that stage, and we're only now moving into the really crazy stage of human history what I call the transhuman stage 4, what I always call, you go from hunting and gathering to agriculture to science and industry, and now to this new crazy, basically unnatural but inevitable stage where we're into strong artificial intelligence, quantum computing, data analysis beyond anything that we could have ever imagined in the past, and everything else that goes along with it. So we're just only now entering that, where we'll probably, our descendants or our robot descendants will probably know these a little bit more than we do. But I think, the nature of existence is there's always going to be things that you just never know.
Are we smarter today than we have been in the past? In that, yes, we have an accumulation of knowledge, right? We have that, and we build upon that and create and invent off of that. But our brain itself, is it smarter and more developed than, say, 10,000 years ago?
No, I don't think so.
You had a Stone Age man, right, that actually sat and contemplated about changing wheat. Right? Now think about that for a second, right? That you are going to domesticate wheat. That is a heavy talk about thinking of the very small, right?
Yeah.
That you are going to change wheat. You're not hunting.
That happened over a few thousand years, but yes, like your point is exactly right on. And to the point of the ancient people, look, let's just be real. None of us would survive a week out in the wild the way those people did in that environment with their tools. I don't think we would. Even the most hardy survivalists of today, no, they have modern weapons. They got rifles. They've got modern clothing. No. Like if we had to survive the way our ancestors of 10 or 20,000 years ago did, I don't think most people would not make it. So there's intelligence that's involved there, and toughness, and a lot of other things. Plus, their brains were larger, by the size of about a tennis ball larger. So the process of civilization has shrunk our brains. It doesn't mean that we're dumber, but I mean, you could say it's more efficient because it doesn't require as much energy. So that's a plus. But even look over the last couple of 100 years, I don't think that we're smarter. I think we're probably actually less. And it's hard to say. Like you have experts in this, they argue about this all the time. Like there are people who say, no, IQ is going up. People actually are more intelligent. But there are very strong arguments that say that we are less intelligent than our great grandparents of a century ago. So there's different ways of looking at it, but we certainly have a society in which people are very kind of passively accepting a lot of information. There are individuals who are very active into researching and learning things, but I don't know if that's actually more intelligence. Yeah,
I don't know if it's smarter. And
yeah,
now here's another example. I'm talking about you specifically. 30 years ago, you had to have a map in your glove box for emergencies, right? That's it. Everything else, it was right here. You knew how to drive across town. You knew all this. You knew the streets. You knew phone numbers. Everything was in your head.
That's right.
All of your friends' phone numbers, all of your friends were in your head.
Well, we had our little devices. I had a little, what was those? Day timers, which was written, you write things down. We did keep records 30 years ago. We weren't reciting epic poetry to get across town, to remember things. So we were keeping records, but yes, it wasn't there's no GPS, that's for sure.
And so today, Richard Dolan gets in his car. Do you look at your GPS when you're just driving across town?
Oh God, yeah, all the time. I'm totally
exactly. So are you smarter or are you lazier? And is this damaging our brains? We're not.
I don't know. I don't know if that is maybe it is. I mean, think about someone who spends time in solitary confinement. You know that they suffer tremendous cognitive loss because you don't get the stimulation that an active brain requires. So that's just a fact. So we need stimulation to our minds to stay intelligent. And you could argue that the GPS is just one more thing to take, another thing that you don't have to worry about doing. You don't have to think about going across town. And of course, that's our entire world is built now on eliminating all risk for people. Everything now is about safety, 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 which is hugely damaging to us, I think. But also by eliminating all of these variables that these unpredictable elements of life that we used to just have all the time, one could really make an argument. I'm sure someone's studying this. I hope they are, that it is very much dulling our cognitive capabilities. And look, just anecdotally, I don't know about you. Every time I have a teacher friend, someone who's in the teaching biz, I've got this obsession with asking them, how bad is it now? I'm always doing this.
Yes,
it's when you drive by a car accident and you have to look. I do this with all of any friends of the family or family members who are teachers, and there's a few. I'm always asking, and the answer is always the same. The answer is, oh God, it is so much worse. No time.
We're screwed.
Right. Yeah, we're done. Don't get old because those people are going to be taking care of you.
Right.
Don't get old. So now, young people listening are screw you, boomer. but I hear it all the time, and I do think there have been a number of psychological studies that have shown curiosity is much less among young people. Curiosity can be measured in various ways, and ability to handle stress
ponder.
These qualities are they seem to be going away at least in Western kids. So I think the society that we're developing, basically bubble wrapping people in safety, is certainly having massive bad psychological effects, and probably one of the reasons we're having a rise of mental illness. I'm sure there's many others, but that and all the drugs that we're giving kids, and just the way that the world that they're living in, which is don't go across the street. Oh, you want to go play with your friend? Well, we'll set up a play date. All of this craziness.
This bubble.
I didn't have that. You didn't have that. Yeah. But
no, we simply didn't. If it all came to a crashing end, right? And we stared it in the face, over the last 2 years. But let's say it all comes to an end and there are no iPads, there are no cell phones, and you turn to a 20-year-old and say, write a note for me and take that to the next village and let them know that we have food. They're going to say, I can't write. What do you mean you can't write? You just graduated high school. They don't teach writing anymore. Now, that's a crazy statement, but it's also fact.
Is that right? They actually don't. You mean penmanship, or you mean actual
They don't
writing?
teach writing in school.
How to spell, how to put a sentence together, grammar. You're talking like that?
I have 220. They'll teach you to type, right? You can, but writing, no.
Having a pen and paper, right? Okay, so
pen and paper. Nobody's writing notes to anybody in school. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily mourn the passing of that. I mean, I think writing it's a beautiful. It's actually just a wonderful historical thing that I don't like to see go away. But actual writing, in other words, the art of communication and putting it down, whether digitally or on paper, that to me, that's what writing is. And there are definitely very good writers who are in their teens and 20s out there who are talented. But I think generally speaking, it's fair to say that the quality of communications declined each generation. I think the sophistication and the ability to spell, just basic things like that, has definitely gone down. I think.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if it all if it all ended, we've got to start back at scratch, right? And we've got to teach kids.
Oh, look, I mean, no one would survive. If you lost, if you lose forget electricity. Like if we lost electricity, we're done. But even if we lost internet connectivity, I don't think most people would survive. I think people would just, everything is dependent on it. And by the way, like I am one of these. I did an interview with a really cool group of guys about a couple of months ago. And at the end of it, I heard them talking about me after I signed off. They're like, I really like Richard, but I think he's really super black-pilled. And I thought, oh man, like
right.
Black-pilled meaning like you're not just red-pilled. You're just so pilled. Like it's like put your head between your knees and kiss your ass goodbye. That's black-pilled because it's done. There's no hope. And I have many days when I am totally black-pilled. I can't lie about it. I think that our society, our civilization is in a bad way. And how to pull it out, how to make it better is, I think about this all the time. I don't have answers. I keep thinking about it though. I want to find an answer. I want to be idealistic and say, oh yeah, let's have UFO disclosure and that'll fix it. Yeah, that's a nice fond thought. Or let's get other types of truth out there and fight the system, fight the power. Yeah, I mean, we're in the midst of a massive global revolution. I've been talking about this a lot. I know it's true. A global/globalist revolution. It is happening. Those people are not going to stop unless they are absolutely forced to stop. And right now, no one's stopping them. So, and it's a totalitarian global police state that's happening. That's happening. And in which, our ability to make decisions for ourselves is being siphoned out by every day, every week. We now have Department of Homeland Security trying to tell you what's disinformation, what you're not supposed to believe, what you are supposed run by a lady, by the way, who got the Hunter Biden laptop thing 1000% wrong, calling that Russian disinfo. She's supposed to be an expert in disinformation. Yeah, well, you just proved like you're a complete amateur, but she's running it, and we'll see how that goes. But that's just the latest. That's one like just throw it in the pile. That's just one of the latest facts. We've got a ton of them. They're coming at us, and it's a war against people, and it's a war against human cognition. If you really want to get down to it.
Well, we'll take a break right here. I saw the tweet a couple of days ago from Whitley Strieber, and very brief, but he said, "I don't know how we did it, but we've managed to cause the end of the United States," right? I'm paraphrasing, but it stopped me in my tracks. Whitley, somebody that we, know and respect, but
Absolutely.
it was a strange tweet to come out of nowhere. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. Tonight, the one and only Richard Dolan joins us for The Interview. More with Richard when we come back after this short break. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer and UNX Networks. Raise Hobbs. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, VX.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv is the fastest growing and one of the most watched networks in the world. I would like to personally invite you to check out our expanding library of TV, film, lectures, and special presentations. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv has over 6,000 videos covering lost history, health, UFOs, spirituality, and our future. We are committed to our community, and with my personal invitation, you can, right now, get your free 30-day membership at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Your own library of information starts today at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer, Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Hi, Race Hobbs with the X. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you have an interest in unexplained phenomena like ghosts, Bigfoot, and UFOs. And by now, you know that we have our own X blog, the UnX newsletter, and the UnX magazine quarterly. But most of you don't know that we have started our very own paranormal conference. And this year, for safety, this 2-day XCon will be virtual, so you can attend from the comfort of your home. XCon presenters include Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, Margie Kay and Preston Dennett, Lisa Martin and Wayne Lawrence, Lee Spiegel, Debbie Zagelmeyer, Dan Terry, Kate Grabowski, and Ray Hernandez. There will also be a live paranormal investigation by the Riverside, Iowa Paranormal team. So come hang out with us in the safety of home as we set out to explain the unexplained Friday, May 13th and Saturday the 14th, 2022. And tickets are on sale now. Go to unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Race Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers, and you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard Dolan is with us. Tonight, it is the interview. I'm going to get inside of Richard's mind. That's what I'm going to attempt to do tonight. Now, Richard.
Yes.
A baby deer born, right? And you see the videos, shaking legs, looking around at the world, discovering things. For a bubbling brook, go up and drink water for the first time, right? That was the UFO community in 1947, right? And between then and now, like that baby deer growing up, what have we learned in the last 47 years?
Yeah, so we've learned things about this phenomenon itself, and we've learned things about the world that we inhabit, and we've learned things about ourselves as well. So we've learned a lot. Like, you can't just look at what we've learned in terms of the UFO subject in isolation from everything else that we've learned. I don't think that's realistic. Here you were talking earlier about new developments in astronomy, and we learned a lot from the 1940s to the 21st century, and we learned a lot about our own origins and our own past as well. And I think that is significant. And we've also learned a tremendous amount about leading edge scientific concepts like space-time metric engineering and wormholes and traversable wormholes, if that's possible, and all of these other things in science, which did not were not really understood or even thought about in the 1940s. And all of that's important because the more science you know, like that's going to affect your conception of what these other beings are. So, for example, in 1947, 48, 49, you have people thinking, wow, did aliens just get here? We've only just noticed them. There was no recognition of the possibility that they may have been here for a little longer than 1947. Over time, we soon learned, oh yeah, maybe there's evidence that they've been here a long time, which I believe that, and I think many people also believe that. So that's something that we've been starting to figure out. And then the other thing that we just didn't know at first was like all the true strangeness that is associated with this. You mentioned Whitley Strieber just before the break. And by the way, Tracy and I were talking a lot about Whitley just today. We're reading the communion letters. In fact, she was over at Rice University just last week reading the original communion letters. But to me, I consider that a really important book, along with Whitley's other works. And what you get with his work and that of many other abduction researchers is this idea of very high strangeness to the field. And that's something that we didn't really have a good grasp on in the 1940s and 50s, this high strangeness. You could even see it in popular culture back then, like The Day the Earth Stood Still. It's like basically men, maybe some women in metal spaceships with a robot or two coming to Earth to, learn about us, I guess, and all like nuts and bolts, truly. But whereas I'm still a proponent of trying to approach this in a so-called nuts and bolts fashion, that is looking at this scientifically, the fact is this is a very strange subject. And, there's a lot of playing with our reality that goes on with this subject. Some of that just might be really, really first-rate cognitive manipulation that they're able to do to us. They're definitely able to play with our minds, emotions, and our memory. So there's a lot that we've learned about that. Another thing that we've learned is that our government, or the people who are running the secrecy, people like Donald Kehoe, who was writing books about this in the 1950s, had an understandable, but what I would say a very deficient idea about his government. Kehoe's idea was, look, America, this is a free country with a functioning democratic system, and what we need to do is bring this matter before members of Congress who are our elected officials, and this is the proper way to deal with this so very important issue, is bring it out in front of the public by our responsible elected officials. And yes, that's a great laudable idea. And for someone living in the 1950s America, yes, of course you're going to believe that that's the viable solution. Of course you will. What we've learned, though, over time, a lot of this had nothing to do with UFOs. We went through learning about our government through Vietnam, through Watergate, through Iran-Contra, through, the international corporate revolution that happened after the end of the Cold War, through 9/11, through all the other shenanigans, and now through COVID. We realize, oh yeah, our government actually are kind of like bad guys, aren't they? They're sort of like criminals, aren't they? Yes, they are criminals. And then when you look at the depth of the UFO secret, you see also this is a deep, 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 deep secret. So deep. It's not just like the Air Force needs to tell us what they know. That's what Kehoe used to talk about. Are you kidding? We're going into private corporate power and financial power that's behind the scenes. We're talking Lockheed and Lockheed's secret divisions that we probably don't know about, and everything else. So it's secrecy within secrecy within secrecy. So all of this, it's much darker, I guess is what I'm saying, when we understand this now, as we're well into the 21st century, than say circa 1950. You're right. Like your analogy is right on, but they were like Bambi taking his first little sip of water in the stream. But the other thing was this. I've often thought about it this way. It's like it's taken an entire human lifetime for us to kind of get these concepts. Like, I don't really think it would have been possible for all but maybe the tiniest handful of human beings living on the planet in 1950 to understand the truly warped, bizarre nature of the alien presence here on planet Earth. Like hybridization, which I believe is real and is happening. The fact that they are in some manner or another probably, quote, walking among us, as David Jacobs wrote in one of his books. And like, those are really difficult and terrifying topics to deal with. And I think it just took a long, long time for the world culturally to catch up to the reality of what we're probably facing. I think it would have been very difficult if you're Harry Truman and it's 1947 and your generals are like, President, we appear to have recovered alien technology.
Right.
Should we tell the world? Like, well, there was a whole lot of unknowns at that time. And as time has gone by, those unknowns just become weirder and weirder, is what I think.
Now, science is starting to catch up to what I believe the UFO community was willing to understand and think about and contemplate and ponder, which is that there is a lot of life out there. Something is visiting us. Let's go and figure that out. Yeah. Science is starting to catch up with that concept. And where today we understand that there are literally 40 or 50 billion Earth-like planets just in our Milky Way, not in the universe, which is what we used to wonder about. Now we know that as science fact. How is that starting to change when we talk about UFOs and ET and contact?
That's a great question. Well, one thing you have to say is the scientists, to their great discredit, really failed to be empirical when it came to UFOs.
Right.
Like, all you have to, I mean, scientists had this knee-jerk reaction for decades and generations. They still do to a large extent, which is essentially saying it's impossible, therefore it can't be. Like, there's no way that they can get here from there because don't you know the distances are so great? You know, what are you, stupid? You think that there's all these aliens here. They can't possibly get here, so don't even bother. Meanwhile, they would never look at the evidence. They would never look at the UFO reports. They would never look at the fact that the military, that even in the 40s and 50s was pretty expensive for its time, our best guys would be chasing these things. Well, what were they chasing? They're describing disc-shaped objects hovering and hanging out over sensitive installations, that doing things that weren't supposed to be possible. Well, you can say that this is impossible all you want, but how do we explain these reports? And the fact is that scientists and academicians, frankly, dishonestly, I'd have to say, dismiss this phenomenon with a wave of the hand because they just assumed that it wasn't worth their time because they wouldn't look at it. They weren't doing what real science demands, which is you look at evidence and you try to be empirical about it. But now, you know, what you're saying, it's true. So now there's, at least you've got an understanding that life is probably super abundant in this universe, which is interesting to keep in mind because a couple of generations ago, the majority of scientists, I'm going to hazard to guess, thought we're probably alone in the universe. And by the way, there are still, even now, there are still a number of astronomers and exobiologists, I guess, who subscribe to the, what's it called, the lonely, or whatever it is, like that we're the only ones here. But I think that they're probably a minority now.
Yeah,
so the fact that, but the rare earth hypothesis, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, the rare earth, right.
Yeah, but they, look, scientists are, they're just people and they have careers to worry about. They get reputations and they're really not a lot different from other people who've gone through the educational system. They have a different kind of training, but that doesn't mean that they're creative or they're brave and they want to buck the system. So, but now there's a little bit more supporting reasons for them to at least consider, oh, well, maybe there's something going on. So that's positive. I mean, they're still at the kindergarten level, most of them, who even those who are now talking about UFOs publicly, there's a few of them out there. It's just like when you listen to them, and I'm glad they're doing it, but you really can see clearly, like most of them have no idea how steep the learning curve of this subject is. Like they just think, oh yeah, I'll just go in and master UFOs now. No, you won't. You're not going to master UFOs. Not for 10 years, you won't. It's a subject that is incredibly profound and has a tremendous amount of data. And don't go in thinking you're just going to get this right away, because it's going to take some time.
Yeah. I think so many people jump into the UFO subject because it's interesting, and I'm going to apply some time to this, and then in a few months I'll have it all figured out.
That was me 30 years ago. I had that arrogance.
Yeah,
I did.
That was my next question, actually. So we know about Bambi in the bubbling brook.
Right.
And how have you changed since you started your research? Who were you before in this subject, and what have you learned now in 2022?
Yeah, a lot of changes. It's been 30 years now since I really first kind of was captured by the UFO subject. And I've gone through many personal changes, many mental changes, psychological changes, like everything I've gone through. I started when I was in my early 30s. I'm almost 60 now. So I'm not the same. When I started out, I was very like ambitious in the academic sense of the word. Like I still was wanting to finish my PhD and teach at some university. I wanted the status of that. I wanted that kind of a life, that's what I thought. And so actually for that reason, it was very hard for me to leave that and go into UFOs, because I knew like you would get no respect. You become the Rodney Dangerfield of the intellectual world by doing UFOs. You get no respect. And I didn't do that lightly, but the fact was I truly became obsessed by this subject. There's no other way that I know how to put it. I was studying U.S. Cold War policy circa 1950. And, that's kind of interesting. It is interesting, but it's got a limited market. You can say there's a limited market for that. But I was into it, and I stumbled into the UFO subject, and I thought, wait a minute. Is this actually, it was Tim Good's Above Top Secret, subtitled
Right.
The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up, which is what grabbed my attention. And I'd heard of the UFO cover-up. Even in the early 90s, we'd heard about that. I didn't know any evidence for it. I only heard people talking about it. But here I was studying the 1940s and early 50s. And I could tell, like, even then I knew, all right, so all the cover-up people, like they're all talking about this thing called Roswell in the 1940s. I should know about this. I've been studying this. Why don't I know about anything? Is this all BS, or is there something here? So that's what grabbed me. And I'll just say, like, I thought, well, I'm going to study this for a few months, and then I'm going to move on. I didn't like having a big question mark hanging over my head. That was really how I thought about it. So I thought, I'll study this. I'll read this book. Let's see what I thought. Well, I read that book, and then I read like 50 more books, and then I read 50 more books after that, and I just couldn't stop because I realized this was absolutely historically gripping to top generals and admirals and central intelligence figures who did not have this figured out and were lying about it to the public. And then I wanted to know, well, why? Like, why was this such a big deal to you people? Did you not figure this out? And I tried to ask myself, did they ever resolve the UFO mystery? And the answer is no, of course they didn't. I mean, they gave pretend answers, like with the Robertson panel and with the Condon Committee in the 1960s, but those weren't real. Those were obviously fake, falsified answers. So I thought, this is a cover-up. This is a genuine conspiracy and a cover-up. And from that point in, like, I just didn't know how to continue my old work. I didn't know how to continue on with just this academic, very pedestrian area of study. And so the next thing I knew, I was out. I just left, and I was an independent scholar, and that's what I've been for the rest of my life. So, but how have I changed? My whole attitude about conspiracies taken lots of changes over the years. Like when I started, I was not what I would call a grand conspiracy person. I was a little conspiracy guy. Like I thought, yeah, there's all kinds of corruption. Everyone knows that there's corruption. You could call this little thing here a conspiracy and that, but is there a big conspiracy and overarching? Like my attitude was no, probably not. I don't think I believe that anymore. I haven't believed that in a long time. I think that there are definitely very significant conspiracies that are global in scope and that have been going for a long time. So that's one thing. Another thing that I've changed is in my acceptance of, I guess we could say, things that we might call paranormal. I don't know if I would call them paranormal per se. I think what we call paranormal is simply, science we don't yet understand, a lot of it. But I've definitely gotten much more open to not just remote viewing, but I'm married to a remote viewer who's very good at what she does. But I was into remote viewing long before I met Tracy. But I published a book by Mike Clellan called The Messengers, which is, one of the most reality-shattering books that I know of in our field, and dealing with, fundamental questions about causality itself and space and time. And so I don't really know what kind of, your initial question about like, what is this universe we're living in? I don't know what our universe is. I don't think that I've got the cognitive capacity to understand it fully, to be honest with you. But what I do know is that my understanding of reality is that, I'm operating on a certain level here, and that there are beings who are operating on a level like that's here and here and here. Like that, I'm pretty sure of. It doesn't mean that we can't understand anything about them. I think we can, but it's a struggle because they can play all kinds of games with space and time that we don't really know how to do. Plus, they can just screw with our minds. So I've gone through changes. Oh, and the other changes. So I used to believe much more. I used to believe more in our ability to take control over our political destiny. I used to believe more in the ability of a genuine UFO disclosure actually effecting positive change in our world. That's why I wrote that book over a decade ago. I still don't want to get rid of that belief. I still want to hang on to it, but do I really believe it? Probably not. I don't really think that. Like I used to think that we had a chance of being able to move into a good place in our civilization, and I don't think that I believe that anymore. So those are some big changes.
Why?
Where I've gone.
Oh, why?
Well, I'm watching a global fascist revolution, and I don't want to get into hyperbole here, but I don't know what to call it. A global pervasive surveillance system, population control on every level, nonstop propagandizing. I mean, a redefinition of human identity in the most fundamental ways. And then on top of that, all the surveillance stuff, the universal facial recognition, voice recognition, the social credit scoring, which is happening. Like 5 years ago, we thought, oh, this could not possibly happen. Well, it's obviously happening. And then, a couple of years, how long will it be before you get a brain-computer interface, just a little Neuralink into your brain, reading every single thing? It's pretty, I know. It's going to be marketed. It's going to be sexy. It's going to be like, yeah, you want to do this? Yeah. All the power that goes to big pharma right now is unbelievable. Massive employment downsizing and all the economic stuff that's going to be happening. It's coming. It's coming.
Before we get to the break, I want to share this. I don't know if you went through this, but last year, what month are we in?
We're in May now.
It was, let's go back to like, I don't know, November or something. I'm dealing with my accountant, and I had to pull certain documents from the IRS. Okay. So I sign into my IRS account that I've had for a number of years. And this is what happens, Richard. I sign in. They said, okay, now to verify this is you have to register with our facial recognition software.
Here we go.
What is it? You know, and now I needed these docs, right? And my accountant needed this stuff right then, or my world was crashing down, right? So, and I'm like, okay, all right. So I click accept the terms, right? I click.
What choice do you have? As George Carlin said, they got you by the balls.
Completely. I mean, and squeezing. And so, but it takes me into this, dude. It was right out of any science fiction movie you've ever seen. And it's this 3D thing, and I've got to take my face, and they're scanning it, and I got to go side to side. And it's like this eerie, you remember Schwarzenegger? And he's going to Mars, and he goes
Total
through
Recall?
Yeah. You know, the whole body scanning thing. That's what it looked like, and it's on the screen.
Yeah.
And so it goes through. I had to get approved. That had to go through some other images of me. I guess they pull it from the net. I don't know if they're. I don't know how.
Oh, right.
Anyway, so I get I get the email back. You are who you are now. And so we get our stuff done. The next day, I was thinking about that was the most invasive. I felt dirty. I felt violated. Mm-hmm. And I thought this can't be where we are today. A couple of months later, I don't know who it was, ACLU, whatever. They got the IRS to stop. Yeah. So you no longer, but I did it
for now.
And my data. And so the question that they raised was, what are they doing with this data? Everybody that is scanned, right? This facial recognition thing. I'm in a database now. I mean, like a real, right? I did the whole thing.
I'll guarantee you, me, and everyone listening is in probably an NSA database. What laws do they need to follow? I mean, all they have to do is Facebook profiles, public profiles. Everyone's got facial recognition. I mean, there's got to be the ability to just do a complete sweep on everyone.
I don't mind my cell phone, to log into my bank accounts or whatever, right? Okay, facial. Okay, this is here, right? It's whole
going to be necessary.
thing.
I know we got the break. I think this is all necessary because I firmly believe the people who are running our world, whether human or not human, they know we're looking at a big crash, economic crash. It's going to be coming. And when it does, there's going to be a lot of unhappy people, and you're going to need ways to control them. That's why I think we're seeing a whole slew of laws coming into place to keep people under control and means of identifying them so that there's nowhere to hide. Because when the stuff hits the fan, you have to have total population control. And so all the means are just going into place now. I expect, I used to never do predictions, but I'm predicting some major dislocations probably within a year. Yeah, probably before the next election, most likely.
It's so funny you said you don't like to do predictions. It's easier to predict today.
Yeah, it really is. It is easier, unfortunately. It is. Yeah,
let's take our break right here. Mm-hmm. The one and only Richard Dolan is with us. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. It's The Interview. More with Richard when we come back. After this short break, this is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and this year, June 18th, 2022, the Disclosure Fest Foundation presents the Mass Meditation Initiative. It's Saturday, June 18th from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. one day only at the Los Angeles State Historic Park in downtown Los Angeles, California, right next to Chinatown. I'm hosting the event again this year with music performances by Trevor Hall, The Desert Dwellers, Poran Gi, and many, many more on 4 separate stages. There's 16 stages in total, over 30 acres in downtown Los Angeles, with vendors and tents and presentations and workshops with Billy Carson, Adam Apollo, Lori Spagna, Laura Eisenhower, Brad Olson, David Palmer, and many, many more. It's all simple to do. Just go to disclosurefest.org for all of your tickets, information, and the full schedule of the day's events. Again, disclosurefest.org. Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard Dolan is with us. The interview. It's going down tonight. Getting inside the head of Richard Dolan, if it is possible. And tomorrow night is Fader night with open lines all night long. And earlier tonight, I was thinking about Hank Williams because of Richard Dolan. And it wasn't what you think, though. I heard a lonely train in the background, and I'm not around any trains. I don't hear trains, but I heard a train in the background. I was thinking of Hank Williams and the verse in one of his songs about the lonely train that you hear in the background and his life. And I was listening to the train in the background, and I wasn't going to bring it up. And then Richard, you were talking, and I was thinking about Hank Williams. I just drifted off. And now speaking about that, we're going to change gears just a little bit. You mentioned earlier that your concept of disclosure has changed since you wrote the book, which has been 10 years. But I look at it a little bit differently. I have your book. You know what? I'm going to tell everybody. Richard made me buy that book one day. I go up to Richard. I said, Richard, we were sitting next to each other at a conference, and you had a box of books, and I go, oh man, I want that. And you go, $20, right? Okay. All right.
I was working it that day.
You were working, so I paid for it. Now,
well, thank you.
But it was so funny. You can have a church, $20 but 10 years later, I would say I'm looking at it differently than you, even though you wrote the book and you have a concept of this. When you wrote that book, I'm sure you weren't thinking about the Senate Intelligence Committee and the UAP task force and the conversations that would be going on Capitol Hill and all the way over to the Pentagon, that this would be this public discourse that is happening today. I would say that is a big dose of AD after disclosure.
Yes. No, I co-authored that book. I always have to give credit to Bryce Zabel. We worked really very closely on that book together. We got a lot of things right. So I'm not saying that the book that we did a bad job. I think, honestly, I look back, I think we did a great job in foreseeing a lot of the developments that were up ahead. There were just certain things I did not see, or I didn't see happening as quickly. But yeah, one of the methods by which we thought disclosure could happen, I mean, the big one that we thought about would be like a mass sighting, kind of like a Phoenix Lights or like a Stephenville, which had just happened recently before that. Something that would be big, that couldn't be denied, that would cause an avalanche effect. And I particularly thought that because I just figured, the secrecy is so entrenched. What would it take? I thought, well, something big, something that cannot be denied, that just hits the sweet spot, as it were. But that's not what happened. Other things that we wondered about would be like a WikiLeaks type of event, like a leak, an unauthorized leak. But we also wondered about insiders, just kind of like putting information out there. And that's closer to what has happened. I think what you always have with any ruling elite, you've always got factions, from the time of Caesar and Pompey and before that up till today. There's always the rulers of a society are very seldom monolithic in every way, and there's always disagreements. And that's true with UFOs. And I think that's what we started seeing in 2016, 2017. People high up had differing opinions about how to deal with the UFO subject. And I still think we're dealing with that. Major factions. This whole thing can easily be walked back. Everything that we've gained, I think, can still be walked back. But like the political blowback. The thing that I didn't see happening is how slowly and how much it could be stalled. That's, I think. But, in fairness, we're writing in the years 2009 and 2010 really, before the destruction of social media, before the complete consolidation of power by the state, really, and its corporate allies over the media. I knew that would happen, but I didn't think it was going to happen as fast as it did. I have to say, it was way faster than I anticipated. Especially starting around 2015, really the year even before Trump ran, you started seeing it happening radically. So because of that, because we've seen the capture really of social media, the censorship and like Google / YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, all those years, of course, they were able really to throttle a lot of conversation. In my opinion, they helped to throttle a lot of our discussion on this subject, as well as, of course, legacy media, which was very much involved in keeping the conversation at a very infantile, minimal level. So everything that came out happened as a result of fighting through that system, not because the system's like, oh yeah, we're going to do this disclosure. And so it's been a struggle ever since. And the speed, we really thought, like, with a major breakthrough, that more people would be like us, who would care. Be like, wow, you've been lying to us all this time. Wow, what else have you been lying about? And how deep does this lie go? And what instead we're really seeing is a total lack of curiosity by most of the public. The information's out there, and they're like, yeah, sure, what's next, So there hasn't really been that moment. And it's shocking to me, honestly, because there were several moments where it really, I would have thought it could and should have happened. A couple of years ago, just before COVID, where I think in 2019, and Lou Elizondo was on Tucker Carlson at May 31st of 2019. And Elizondo says on national television, yeah, our government, we have acquired these objects. It just says it. Like, imagine how insane that is. And if that had been said on national television a few years earlier, I think it could have been just astonishing. And yet somehow no follow-up. No one followed up. And so that's the thing that I'm freely going to admit, like, I did not see that happening. And I thought once there was like a big truth about this UFO that would come out, that would cause a snowball effect, like an avalanche effect that could threaten to go out of control. And that's not happened. And it hasn't happened because the ability of the state, let's just say, and its allies to control the narrative has rapidly, exponentially increased, even since 2010 when we wrote our book. So that's the thing I didn't see. I'll fully admit that. But we did see a lot of other things. And fundamentally, I think that the thesis of the book is still totally on point, which is that, like, what we realize is that if this secret were to come out in its entirety, the implications are absolutely revolutionary for our society in so many ways. And understanding how revolutionary it is gives you a really good idea on why the secrecy has been in place for so long, and why, from the point of view of those people maintaining the secret, that it has to continue as long as possible. And I'll tell you, they're going to continue this for as long as possible.
Do you think that not only what we're talking about with, Fox and Tucker and Lou, but we still have the other media outlets like the New York Times and others, the BBC, MSNBC, everybody's covered the subject, that the reaction hasn't been as profound as I think all of us expected it to be. I'm talking about with the rest of the world. This stuff is like out there now. Right. Is it because of the desensitizing and the slow process of exposing ET and UFOs and science and exoplanets and everything else that comes into play?
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's it. Because I think, like, the subject is, it is very, very easy to package the UFO subject in a very powerful, explosive way that people just go like, holy crap, this is unbelievable. Like, that's not difficult to do. You do it every night. I do it. Like, there are people in this world, they understand just how incredible and powerful this subject is. So that's not the problem. The problem is that the media that you were just referring to, they're not independent or free. They're adjuncts of the state, of state power, and of international power, for that matter. They're not out there. I mean, does anyone really believe this anymore? That the New York Times or CNN or Fox, it doesn't matter what your politics are. Like, you're talking about huge corporate international interests that are beholden to a system of power and control and mind control. This is what I firmly believe. So no, they're not out. They're out. They're not out to educate the public. I mean, not in the things that really matter. Yeah, if you want to find out how the Mets did last night, they're great for that. But I'm just talking about for real news, for real information, for understanding the world. No, human beings. You talked about what makes us different from other animals. One thing that makes us really unique is that we invented the story. We invented the narrative. Like we forget how incredible that is. Like to have a story, like this is where this thing starts and then goes here and then that's a story. We invented that. And now we can call it a narrative. And we're the only species that makes it absolutely critical importance to control narratives that other people are hearing. No other species does that. I wonder if aliens do that. I mean, we're much higher cognitively than other species. Aliens are higher cognitively than us. Do they have to exercise greater narrative control than we do? I wonder. But we know that we do. We are all about that. Why? Because it's all about power and maintaining power. You've got to control what other people think. And we've never seen a time in our history where it's been more essential than right now to maintain total control. And that's because we just had 30 years of the internet. We just had 30 years of a new invention, exploding narrative control that had always existed in human history. I mean, this is, yeah, there was the invention of the printing press. That was kind of big. And, it's always, information can get out of control. But with the internet, oh my God, orders of magnitude beyond that. So starting in the late 80s and then the 90s, we were like, my God, the amount of freedom and information. It's unprecedented. That's true. And the loss of narrative control by centralized powers, that was also a major threat. And so now what we're seeing is a, return. They have to get back narrative control. It's absolutely essential. And in some ways, it's like you want a unified cultural narrative about a lot of things. Like that's healthy. That's a society that if you actually have a culture, which we don't really have anymore, but if you had an organic culture that actually existed, it would be normal to have standard narratives and standard stories that people would share. That's a sign of a healthy culture. Well, we've destroyed our culture. We don't have that. We have just got a bunch of people running around atomized, shopping by themselves, living alone. We don't have culture. We've destroyed that. But what is still essential is narrative control. And so where the heck was I going with this? I had a point with all this.
Okay. Well, let me help you.
I had a point.
They say first the mind, then the body. Don't forget those words, right? But let me help you with this. How is it possible that society missed two of the most profound statements that were ever made in the history of this world? One, Elizondo goes on TV and says, we've got the stuff. Number two, Eric Davis in the New York Times says, I told the Senate Intelligence Committee, we've got flying saucers in our possession.
Absolutely. And very important.
Crickets. And it's not just that no other journalists worth their salt grabbed onto those points and didn't go after Eric Davis and didn't go after Lou Elizondo to expand on this, number one. Number two, public in general let it go. So how is that possible? That's not the result of the media. It's that we have blinders on and let this go.
Absolutely. Well, most people don't. Yeah. I mean, look, this is not even a knock on most people, but the vast majority of people don't have much education, honestly. They may have a college degree, but that's not the same as an education. Sorry, it just isn't. And besides that, like they've got lives to live. They got things to do. You can't expect ordinary people just to be fighting the system all 24/7. They've got lives to live. So there's that. And on top of that, there's unbelievable, powerful cultural pressure to conform to standard beliefs. It's greater now than it's been for a long time, I think. But really the lead has to come from both established and independent media, especially established media. We like to think, oh yeah, we're beyond that. No, we're not beyond that. They're still incredibly powerful and important. And the established media just has not touched that story. They don't touch it. And there's a reason for that. You can't tell me that there's no journalists willing to explore this to their heart's content, and yet they don't. We both know Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal. I have a lot of respect for both of them. But and you listen to them talk, they've given interviews. It's very obvious. You write for the New York Times, like there's only so far you can go. And we all know that. You do a piece for any of the major networks, whether it's CNN or any others, and there's only so far you. I mean, some of these organizations, like we know for a fact, they literally falsified their news anyway. It's all about propaganda and control. They're not really news. So to work within those media, you really can't do true investigation. You can only do what's sanctioned. That's really all that you can do is what's sanctioned. And if you get really lucky once in a while, you can make a breakthrough. I think Leslie and Ralph were able to make a breakthrough in the New York Times back in 2017. I think they were able to do it because, frankly, at that time, the TTSA stuff was coming out, and there was some very important information, some new videos that were coming out, new data, and it was going to break. And I suspect that they made a very good pitch to the New York Times and said, look, why don't you just get ahead of this? So I think that's where they were able to do it. But we haven't seen the major media really do any significant follow-up on any of this stuff. New York Times did a UFO piece without Leslie and Ralph involved, and it was total worthless, junk. So it's only a few people that are really making the difference in this. I think that the major narrative control is still as powerful as ever, and it can easily be rolled back. Like all of the gains that we've made in terms of our ability to talk about UFO or UAP culturally, probably some of it won't go away, but some of it can definitely be rolled back. Now, one thing, I was saying a little earlier, I don't think that the secret will ever be voluntarily given up, and I believe that. But that doesn't mean that there won't be levels of false disclosure that are possible. And
what do you mean false? That's interesting.
So think of, pardon me, think of all of the UFO data that is being held in the secret world, right? As like a mountain, like Mount Everest. So a lot. So what could be released? Well, you could just take a little sliver out of Mount Everest, like a little tiny sliver. And that could still be a lot, actually. But you're picking what that sliver is. And then you give that to the public and you're like, yeah, actually, we got some information here for you. This is real. So what was it? I think Alan Dulles, former CIA director, said the best way to keep a secret is to pretend to share it. And it could, there's a lot of levels of truth to the UFO subject that disclosure can provide. We're at the level of like, well, we encounter some objects. We don't know what they are. We don't know that they're alien, but maybe that's where we're at right now officially. I mean, that's like the lowest level, but that's still better than where we were a few years ago, which was there's nothing out there. So now we're at this level, but there's many, many levels between. I mean, how far can it go? How far can it go? Can you say, well, yeah, they are walking among us. And by the way, they can screw with your mind anytime they want. And, oh, yeah, they're totally embedded in our society and they're controlling everything. Like, do we go that far? Is that even true? Maybe it is. Or can they go at least as far as saying, actually, yeah, we've been hiding a lot of their technology, and it is revolutionary. Do we go so far as to say that abductions are real, and some beings are coming into people's homes and taking them and creating a hybrid? Like, how far do you go with this? There's so much. So I think when I'm saying false disclosure, I guess I would say we could be easily primed for a deceptive disclosure. Absolutely. You could easily, because here's the thing. The problem with the disclosure is when you admit that there's something going on, and if it's a problem, then that means you have to do something about it. You can't just tell the world, if you're like the president or some other important person, that, there are these beings here. And the fact is, some of them scared the freaking hell out of us. And we don't know how to control them. And yeah, they do have underground bases. And yes, they do whatever the hell they want. And we've got no power over. Like, if that's the truth, how can a president say that? Or any political leader? Like, they'll never say that. So what they'll do is they'll spin, and spin in a way that will make the problem go away so they don't have to do anything about it. And they don't care. These politicians are not out to solve anything. They're just out to ride the system as long as they can ride it. So I think, like, I used to not think that the UFO subject would be used ever as a political football, as it were, to get votes or to win an election. I'm not so sure anymore. I think it's possible that you could see political leadership using this subject in as careful a way. They still have to be careful. They got to be real careful. But I could see it potentially happening now as in a deceptive way, even for something as crass as to get votes. Because actually right now, getting votes is really particularly important because there's a revolution underway. And the revolution has to happen.
Well, and both sides don't know. I don't do politics on the show, but the one thing
I know.
But I do the conspiracy of politics, and I'll say this: both sides, in fact, all sides, center, left, right, whatever you want to call it, they don't even understand each other anymore. They don't. I mean, it's completely out of control, and I would have never thought that it would come to a point where that they don't even understand each other. Right. They just don't get it. There is no plan. And here's the crazy part about the UFO vote, the ET vote. Does that happen from somebody that is established, right? Somebody that's a career politician, has been on Capitol Hill for 30 years, right? Bought and paid for, right? Okay. Right. Does those statements come from them in an election year? Or does it come from somebody young that is running for the first time?
It's a great question. I used to talk about this with Steve Bassett all the time. And Bassett always had like this argument that was kind of pretty good, at least at a certain level. He would say, look, any political figure, you get all that political capital. If you're the disclosure president, you go down in history. And Steve has always said that. I think he still says that. And that's you can see
There's
that, right?
To that. Yeah. There's something
you
to
can
that.
say you get that legacy. The problem with that has always been presidents, if they go too far astray, they can live easily in fear of their lives. Just ask John F. Kennedy. The presidents are very, very strictly controlled. And when they're not controlled, bad things happen. They're all very controlled. You think our current president's not controlled? I'm not talking Democrat, Republican here. It's obvious. Presidents are extremely controlled people by and large. So, and when they're not, then it just gets crazy. It gets crazy. And then they become controlled. I think that was the last guy we had. I think that's what happened. He ended up being very controlled. But my point is simply that it can be done if it's done by someone in sufficient authority, perceived authority, who can gain the confidence of the nation and the world with a statement. Honestly, I would say if Obama, I was not really ever much of a fan of him. I was glad when George W. Bush left the White House. I will say that. And for about a minute, I thought, okay, maybe this will be better. Obama had the ability. He could have done it. He would have had the moral authority, and he was good on camera. He could possibly have done it. But of course, he would never have done it because the guy was a complete tool of Wall Street, and of the national security community.
You know what? I think we have 240 years of controlled presidents.
Not 240 years. Not the entire history. Not the entire. I wouldn't say that.
Okay, what, the first two? Right? And the point is
there's control and then there's control. Okay, so levels of control.
I've got to take a break right here, but my point is we say these words that we are speaking right now as a nation every 4 years. Every 4 years, it just gets repeated. But this is the year. This is the time for change, and we go through 4 more years. It doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter. This is Fade to Black, and I'm talking to somebody that's That's a government history major. Yeah, like I know what I'm talking about. We'll be right back. More with Richard after this.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, the X.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? UNX Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of Forbidden Knowledge, and we're heading to Egypt this October. Come join Jimmy Church, myself, and the Forbidden Knowledge team as we spend a week exploring Giza, the Great Sphinx, the Great Pyramid, Saqqara, Dashur, Aswan, Edfu, Dendara, Karnak, and we'll celebrate Jimmy's birthday in Luxor. The Forbidden Tour of Egypt is this October 5th through the 12th and includes a 4-day Nile cruise, expert Egyptologists, and a chance to explore Egypt with Jimmy and I as your host through your journey of a lifetime. Space is limited, so make your reservations now. Please visit forbiddenknowledge.com for information and complete itinerary. That's forbiddenknowledge.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and this year, June 18th, 2022, the Disclosure Fest Foundation presents the Mass Meditation Initiative. It's Saturday, June 18th from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., one day only at the Los Angeles State Historic Park in downtown Los Angeles, California, right next to Chinatown. I'm hosting the event again this year with music performances by Trevor Hall, The Desert Dwellers, Poranki, and many, many more on 4 separate stages. There's 16 stages in total, over 30 acres in downtown Los Angeles, with vendors and tents and presentations and workshops with Billy Carson, Adam Apollo, Lori Spagna, Laura Eisenhower, Brad Olson, David Palmer, and many, many more. It's all simple to do. Just go to disclosurefest.org for all of your tickets, information, and a full schedule of the day's events. Again, disclosurefest.org.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, it's Richard Dolan. The Interview. I just like saying it. Richard Dolan is with us tonight, and Richard and I, over the years, I have, one day I'm going to go back and count how many shows and interviews and things and conferences that we've done together, and then throw in the crazy private conversations that have gone on. We have
many.
Yeah, we have logged some hours together. Tonight,
10 years, I think.
Yeah. And tonight, best conversation yet. And you know what, though? We say that after every...
Jimmy, I got to say this. I actually love hanging out and doing these things with you. And, there's other people who do good work out there. But the conversations that I have with you, I do always feel like you've got a way, you push me in directions that I wouldn't normally go. So I enjoy it. I like being pushed.
So thank you. It's trust. It's trust. It's trust, and that trust goes both ways. It's a two-way street. Mm-hmm. And now this is the interview. So now I'm going to get inside
the interview. Yeah.
I'm going to go deeper.
Okay.
And I guarantee
people should know, like, this is a completely spontaneous thing on your part. I had no idea that you wanted to do anything like this. You just hit me up with a message like, "Hey, how about an interview?" And I'm like, "All right, good." Didn't know what we were going to discuss. Next thing I look at your website, it's like Richard Dolan, the interview. I'm like, "Oh, this is the interview." Okay. Now I know.
And so this will be the question you have never been asked. Right now,
Okay.
It's going down. The first time.
Let's do it.
Is this? I used to always frame you over the years, and I used to say this to Richard privately, that I've always looked at him as the pragmatic black and white guy, right? That represents the UFO community. Okay, so let's start with how I used to look at you. That guy, is he afraid of ghosts? Does Richard Dolan go into a haunted house? Does that matter to you?
Well, I actually have gone into haunted houses. Like I've done television shows. Some of them never made it anywhere. But I did a few where I would go into these very like creepy places. It's probably for the best those shows never happened. But I have spent time with individuals. I've interviewed individuals, I guess, off the record who've had some very, very terrifying types of experiences that you can call paranormal. Years ago, I interviewed Bigfoot witnesses, and I've interviewed people who've done things like voodoo and all other kinds of things. So I've been exposed to all of that. And, the thing is, there's nothing unscientific about considering these types of things. I think it was Jacques Vallée said, look, there's nothing inherently unscientific about UFOs. It's how you approach any of these things that's scientific or not. And, when you talk about things that are paranormal, like ghosts, let's say, that we think of, I have often felt, well, first of all, probably every family in the world has a ghost story. Probably, or most do. Mine does. The family that I grew up with, we have ghost stories, and most of the friends that I grew up with had some kind of ghost story that they could relate. So it's kind of hard for me why would you dismiss something that's so widespread just because your current version of science doesn't have an easy way to explain it? Like, to me, that's almost like why scientists dismiss UFOs. Like, let's try to be empirical. You can't always develop a proper hypothesis, but if you've got all of these cases and all of this evidence, then do you just throw it away because you don't have a good explanation for it? Like, I don't think I work like that. So it's something like ghosts. I don't know that I've ever encountered a ghost. I don't think that I knowingly have done so.
See,
however,
okay.
Well, I'm going to say this. So
okay,
both of my parents are now gone from this side of the veil, let's say. And I've told both of these stories, especially the one with my father. My dad passed away just in December of 2018. And the night he passed away, I was at home with Tracy. We were both on the couch working. We were each on our laptops. And I had just installed some.
This is the lights.
The lights, yeah. So I'll just be real quick. But these brand new lights that had been installed started going bright and dim and bright and dim and bright and dim. And I was like, what the hell is this? And I get up there and I'm looking at it. Tracy noticed it first, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is bizarre. And I jammed them on and off a few times, and that stopped it. 15 minutes later, my sister called me to say that our father had died 15 minutes earlier. And I mean, those lights were perfectly, and there was nothing wrong with those lights. So you could just say, well, that's a weird coincidence, but I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm just not going to believe that. When my mother died, 2 years after that, I didn't have anything happen, but my sister, one of my sisters, is a nurse, and she was on a shift, and in her the room where she was, there was a clock on the wall, and the clock literally crashed to the floor, and it was the minute that my mother died. In a hospital on the other side of town, by the way.
Right.
My sister also said that she felt tremendous heart pain in her own body for unexplained reasons. So look, I mean, I don't know if that's ghosts or what, but these are stories that are in my family. I'll guarantee you most people listening have similar stories. So you can just say, well, that's just hocus pocus and there's got to be some logical explanation. Or you can just say, you know what? Consciousness or all right, you go. I'm done.
But this is the example of the black and white pragmatic Richard Dolan mindset. You didn't answer the question. I'm not concerned with Jacques Vallée or people that you've interviewed or your family or Tracy. I'm not concerned with any of that. The question was, does Richard Dolan believe in ghosts? Is he scared of a haunted house?
No, I'm not afraid of a haunted house. Maybe I should be. Hey, I read The Exorcist a long time ago. It's a pretty creepy book.
But do you believe in ghosts?
I believe in a survival of consciousness after death, or survival of something about us after the death of these bodies. I can't say that I know that. This is where, look, there's a difference between knowledge and belief and knowledge and faith. These are all different things. So I can't say that I have knowledge. No, I don't. I have and you know, what's faith? Faith's like a little bit of belief and a little bit of hope. It's like trust, maybe. And I could go that far. I could say that I have a genuine faith that there's something that happens, that our some consciousness, our soul, whatever you want to call it, survives the death of these bodies. And that, is it possible that human beings can have some kind of interaction with those and we call them ghosts? I'll say yes. Sure, it's possible. Sure.
So you take it beyond, right, that the soul and consciousness is not a chemical reaction, right? This is
right. I think that's right. I think it's more than that. I do believe it's more. Well, you know, we've got words for it. We call it non-locality now. There are neuroscientists, I think they're a minority, but they're out there, who have arguments. They call them the brain wars. You know, what is consciousness? Is it just chemicals and electrical impulses in our brain, or is it something more? I do think it's something more. I can't say that I know it. I'm not really qualified to argue with a neurologist about it, but that doesn't matter. This is what I think. So I think that there's a non-physical element, the key element of us. I'll just, for lack of a better word, let's call it the soul. People have used that word for thousands and thousands of years. I'll use it too. We have a soul. You have a soul. And what happens to that after the death of these bodies, I can't say that I know. But yes, I think what happens to it is important. And I will also have a belief that what happens to it is somewhat contingent on how we treat it in this existence of ours right here. So if you treat it like crap, then maybe that there'll be results to that in the next dimension.
And if all of that is true, I'm going to use the word true, right? We have a soul, we have consciousness. This must be indeed universal, and that any ETC out there, extraterrestrial civilization, must also possess the very same thing, because atoms are atoms, particles are particles, right? Life is life, DNA is DNA, amino acids are amino acids, right? That this must exist everywhere. And therefore, is that how some of this communication happens?
Yeah,
and that,
I think so. I do.
Right?
I think they've got an ability to manipulate what we might call, let's say they might have what we call spiritual technology. That might be a word to use.
Oh, that's
Like,
tasty, actually.
Isn't it? Right. That's
technology.
I can't claim credit for that. Someone threw that one out at me, and it's kind of good. So, but I think it's a good way to look at it. Like, we have the most bare bones scientific. We don't even know if we have an acknowledgement scientifically of a realm like spirit realm. But let's just say a lot of people believe, and some people feel that they know that there's a spiritual realm. So let's just assume that that's true. Let's just go on working with that, and then that a non-terrestrial species that might be a little bit ahead of us in the evolutionary game, and with a higher brain capacity and a more sophisticated way to deal with this. Let's just say they've passed the threshold by which their brains can A, perceive things about space and time that we cannot perceive, and then B, perceive a spiritual dimension, if we can use that. Let's say that they're able to do that more easily than us.
There would be a C too. It's one thing to perceive, but it's another thing to understand.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So there's all these levels, right? So I think we're kind of at this cusp level, like where we're almost able to do it, but and that's why we have people who have got psychic ability, but limited. I mean, for the most part, it's limited, but we have some. So we're kind of close, and our brains allow us to have that because they're organized in a very sophisticated way. So let's just say other beings are a little bit ahead of us, and so they can perceive the spiritual realm better than we can. And if that's the case, that gives them a lot of advantages over us in terms of their ability to deal with us, doesn't it? And it would allow them to do many, many things that we are just not even aware of. Definitely. And if they've been able to develop a technology for it, I mean, you go back into even books like Linda Moulton Howe from over 20 years ago, Glimpses of Other Realities, and you get ideas of containers for souls. I think that's in her book. And this is an idea that's been talked about at least since the 90s, maybe even sooner. A container for your soul. Like, what's that? Like a little box? Like, what do you do with that? Is it possible? I cannot say that I know that at all. But if there is such a thing as that, then as a soul that could be extracted from a body, could it be placed somewhere in a container lined with lead, for example? Who knows? I'm just putting this is just like us having some chat here, but I definitely think things like that are possible. Yeah, absolutely possible. And, they would be able to understand things about us. You mentioned Whitley earlier, and it is in the Communion Letters, in fact, where he hypothesizes toward the end of the book that, what if these beings, these visitors, as he calls them, are just the dead? They're us, but they're the dead people. And that, I think he really, and Anne, his wife, I think she strongly believed this. I spoke with both of them about this.
Richard, I had him on the show last week.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that I think you and I appreciate about each other is our respect for Whitley. And we have been able to sit down and just pick his brain, right? Well, so last week I specifically asked him about this. This
okay.
right here.
I'd like to know what he said.
Well, I had brought up to how profound it was for me. This is like 15 years ago on Dreamland on his show, and I forget who his guest was. But their conversations back then, they're still great. But I mean, back then, they would go deep. And Whitley just goes right there. I think the little blue troll guys were not aliens. I believe that they are us in the afterlife. Right?
So he still said, yes, okay.
Yeah. And I was like, what did Whitley say? Rewind, right? And I went back numerous times to listen to those statements of his. And I asked him about that last week. I said, what is it that you were trying to say? He said, I'm saying just that.
Yeah.
That there's another dimension and that's it. And they are coming back and we are seeing ourselves how we will appear.
Yeah. I think he
Right?
believes that because if you read the communion letters, this is sometimes it's an overlooked book. It's a really important book, I think, because what happened after he wrote Communion in 1987, he and Anne got thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of letters from people around the world, mostly the US, but just thousands of people, like literally many thousands, pre-internet. This is all like people writing out it by hand and or typing it out. And eventually Anne did the real Herculean job of going through most of them and editing them. And they put them into this book called The Communion Letters, and anyone can read it. And what the last, I think it's one of the last chapters deals with these visitors and death. And there are a number of cases where people would write in where I can't remember some of the specifics, but where you read it and it's like, my goodness, like this young boy who recently died appeared with these ETs to this individual, for example, and this was written about
Right.
and on and on. It's like it's as if like they are us, and that could explain, at least in this interpretation, why people might feel like they get this intense feeling of love sometimes, which sometimes people will report this. Like you're dealing with this horrifically ugly, tall insect creature that would normally cause you to like
freak out,
lose your bowels right in front of it.
Right.
And no, instead you're like, oh my God, I love you. You love me. Like, why? You don't know this big 6 foot tall insect. Why would you have love for it? But is it possible? I'm just throwing really Whitley's thinking on this, and Anne's thinking was that these beings might well be us in our afterlife. And it's a pretty out there theory. I don't know if I believe it. There are some very weird things, though, about this phenomenon. And is that part of the answer to the question of aliens being here? Well, I don't know if that is part of the answer, or if that's what we used to call a red herring, a mistake. Because there's certainly a lot of evidence that the UFO phenomenon is technological, and that the beings are acting in a way that, I don't know, it doesn't seem like they're us in the future. And plus, there's been a lot of variety of types of beings that have been reported, so it's not clear. This is a very complex subject. You're asking, where we were in the 1950s and today, and one of the things that I wish were true is that the UFO subject were as simple as it seemed in the 50s. One species from outer space is like, okay, fine, maybe two. All right, fine, two. But like you get the variety that
from Mars, from Venus.
But instead, like, this subject does not behave. UFO subject does not behave. And it's fascinating. It's one of the great things about it, but it's maddening.
Well, when we contemplate, I love the word ponder, right? So when we ponder who could be visiting us, and now this is where the science for me helps me a lot, in that if we have 50 billion Earth-like planets with water in the Goldilocks zone, rocky planets right here in our Milky Way, right in our galactic neighborhood, right here. Well, how many of those support life? Okay. Well, how many are intelligent? How many are beyond us? Well, the number is 40 billion. So if you take 1,000th of a
40 billion, I think you said Earth-like planets, perhaps, that could support life in our galaxy.
So now we are dealing with a number that is so crazy, which it could be 100,000 advanced civilizations right here, 100,000, and that is just a fraction of 50 billion. It's just a fraction of planets. Well, they are from different parts of the Milky Way. They may not know it. So when we talk about mantis beings or Nordics or little grays or little blue trolls, I don't care. Of course, it's going to be a wide variety of species, of races, of beings visiting this planet that can be the craziest part of your imagination of what these beings may look like. And do they have empathy? Right? Do they have souls? Are they cold? Well, they're all of those. Are they artificial
Right.
intelligence? Are they robots? Are they androids? They're that too, right?
Yeah.
By
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thousands.
Yeah, I think I like what you're saying here, and I would just go further and just add that I suspect, this is what I wrote in my last book, The Alien Agendas. I suspect that they're here in large numbers now in the last century for a particular reason. Like I think we've probably always been monitored. We may have been created. We may have been, I don't know about created, but modified. Yes, I wonder about that. But certainly monitored and at a low level. I don't think that they controlled us. I don't know. Maybe they've had avatars have come in from time to time, possibly, yeah. But I think in the last century, we've definitely brought the neighborhood in, because if they have the ability to monitor us, then they would have known about 100 years ago that we were just on the cusp of like leaping right into their world. We're just like right there. With the mass industrialization and application on a widespread basis of scientific principles of all kind, we basically got the fire of Prometheus, as I call it. The science, the secret, the keys to the kingdom, the scientific method, and we started really applying it in the 19th century and then in the 20th century, and now, I mean, all of this is really fast. It's really rapid. So we're just reinventing ourselves, and now we are creating ourselves as a new species, a really bizarre species, and one that I don't want to partake of it. Actually, I don't want to be what we're going to become. But I think it's inevitable, frankly, kind of like some kind of hive mind. I think almost like a.
Well, I think we're gonna grow out of it. And let me explain why, and then I want your response before the break, and then we'll come back and pick it up. But it's this: all of us were 20 years old. All of us partied stupidly. All of us did dumb things. All of us jumped off of the second story, of your house onto a mattress in the backyard. We've all done stupid things, but we grew up. Mm-hmm. And that's where humanity is right now, is we're growing out of that party stage, that reckless stage, and that eventually we are going to just mature and realize that there is other things. And hopefully making contact with ET directly gives us that hope for the future and a reason to grow up and a reason to mature. I don't think we're going to remain stupid like we are forever. I don't think we're going to burn this thing into the ground, Richard. I really don't.
Well, I would like that. I do think we already have the answers spiritually and ethically. We don't need aliens to give us higher consciousness. We had people like Buddha. We had people like Jesus. They already came up with the answers. Sure. Honestly, they already did. It's like, all right, desire is the cause of suffering. Yes, that is totally true. Right, and love others, love your enemies. That's hard to do. That's really hard. But these are ethical injunctions. Like we already know what we should be doing to make this inherently screwed up proposition known as human civilization to work at least somewhat well. Like human civilization is not a natural thing. And we're not naturally supposed to live like this. I don't think we're naturally supposed to live in small communities where we know everyone, and we don't do that anymore. So to make it work, we need a really proper ethical system that we incorporate. And we've never succeeded in doing that. We've had a few people who've led the way, and they've said, this is how you do it. And everyone's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then we go back to our old ways. How to change? I don't know, other than changing ourselves as a species. And I don't like the idea of changing ourselves as a species. So I don't really know what the solution is. I suspect what's happening is we're moving very rapidly. We're being pushed into this. This might have happened naturally over maybe several thousand years, but we have a global elite system that's now pushing us very rapidly into this, much, much faster than we should, into a kind of hive anthill, like an anthill, basically, where we're all being controlled, we're all being surveilled, we're all like the wiggle room that freedom used to give us. That's going away, and so we're rapidly being forced within the space of a couple of generations to become something totally different. And we could do that given a longer amount of time, but I just think doing it as rapidly as we are doing it is just going to cause a lot of people to have some serious mental illness and just seriously bad maladaptive behaviors and psychoses and all that other stuff. Like, we're just changing too rapidly. But you can see that there's this effort being made to change the human being at a fundamental level worldwide. It'll take a few generations.
You know what? I'm just going to say this right now. Screw the commercials. Let's just keep going.
All right.
But didn't we have that exact same thing? I'm going to make 2 points. We had that 1,000 years ago with the lords and the landowners and the kings and the monarchies of Europe, where it was total dominant control of the masses and the minds. Right. And that did change. But you're right. It's cyclical. Right. Are we right back into that? We recognized it. We rose up. We fought it. There was a lot of revolutions, man. There's a lot of bloodletting over mind control of the masses 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years, 500 years.
No. I'm glad you brought this up. Actually, when you really look at it in the long history of human civilization, we've only had freedom. Freedom was this little brief thing. Really we only started to see genuine freedom. You could say like during the age of exploration, you start getting a middle class happening. And as a result of that, it required people who could be kind of independent and go out on their own. You have to be a strong, independently minded person. Out of that, you get the development of an ideology based on freedom. That gives you the American Revolution. And you have a viable middle class for the first time really in history that is creating and inventing all these amazing things and increasing wealth for the entire world, frankly. So with that, with a viable middle class, you need intellectual freedom. And so for like 2-3 centuries, we kind of had that. But what we might find is that was a historical anomaly. That's possible. And what we might see, and you get all these crazy people at the World Economic Forum. What is his name? Yuval Noah Harari. He's got the ear of Klaus Schwab, and he's talking like, there's no soul, there's no spirituality. You're not anything. We're just going to control people completely forever through all kinds of mind control. And I don't think he has a problem with that. And really, what I think we're looking at is with all of the algorithms that are coming now that are doing all the intellectual labor that people used to need to do, with generative artificial intelligence coming aboard, which is, I mean, my God, where they're at right now is already Nobel level work and beyond. And so human intellectual labor is less and less critical to all of this. I mean, there's still good. You still need some people who are brilliant, but not as many, and they're just going to be working for the big corporate interests anyway. So my point is that human freedom is, I think, increasingly being seen by the people at the top of our little hierarchy as this kind of unnecessary anachronism. So I think that they're going to be looking at going back to the lords of the manor and the people who are basically running the world, and they'll probably end up creating some kind of biologically based caste system in the process, because is everyone going to really have access to all the good genetics and all the the immunities and all? I don't know. I somehow don't think that'll happen. So I think it'll go to those people who are able to maintain control. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be a lot of do-it-yourself gene therapy and hackers. That'll be, you kind of wonder what the human race is going to look like then. Holy crap. Like that's almost as crazy as anything else. But we're on the verge of recreating our whole species in a way that strikes me as literally as insane, like as a literal form of insanity. And I just don't think is going to end well. I don't know. Like, I think evolution's one thing. You want natural evolution. But what we're doing, this ain't natural. This is something different. I just can't think it's going to end well.
I want to stay with ET for a second because I'm going to swing this around and tie it into Elon Musk. Watch how I do this. Okay. So we have going back to this 1947, how much have we learned thing? Certainly science today has introduced us to concepts of technology and the possibilities of travel and how we would do this, including like movies like Interstellar, right? Where we are introduced to these concepts. And I love science fiction for doing that. But the whole nuts and bolts metallic flying saucer dude in there, with a joystick, which is, happening for sure. But then there's the other ideas of it's not necessarily about traveling great distances. It's taking away the great distances and making them shorter. How do you think ET is managing to visit this planet?
I think they figured out their own mathematics of something a little bit more advanced than the Alcubierre equation. So Miguel Alcubierre in the 1990s came up, with kind of like the physics of warp, the math of warp drive, so to speak. And as he conceived it at the time, it seemed theoretically possible to create a space-time warping around your craft. The problem is simply that the amount of energy required to do it just seemed like more than what was in the entire universe. So it seemed like it would be impractical. I don't think that's the obstacle any longer. I think you've got some very smart people looking at loopholes in that, and maybe a whole lot of energy may not be needed to create a kind of softening of the space-time field around a craft. And if that's the case, it would be relatively cost-effective, in theory, to warp space from one part of the galaxy or even universe to another. And that you wouldn't violate the speed of light law. You'd be essentially, because within your space-time bubble, you're still obeying all the standard Newtonian physics, but this is a little bit beyond. So this is, even Bob Lazar described this 30 plus years ago when he was doing his run at the physics of flying saucers. They kind of warp space in front of them and stretch it out behind them and all that. I think that's kind of probably what they do. That's one thing that they do. Now the other possibility is, are they you got Whitley's idea that they're the dead. It's a fascinating idea, but forget that for a minute and just talk about if there's a way to understand dimensions of reality. I to this day, I don't know how I subscribe to this idea, like an interdimensional theory of UFOs. I can't rule it out. Maybe these beings live in, what is it? The membrane, like you got the brain right in front of you, right? And there's like this other universe, and then there's this other universe here. And maybe they just can break through this brain, and now they're in our universe. And then they figured out a way to leave it and go into theirs.
Sure.
Maybe, is that it? I don't know. It wouldn't make them any less extraterrestrial, frankly. They're just coming from another place. What really is the difference in practical terms with us? They're either coming from another dimension or they're coming from another planet. Whatever it is, they're coming from somewhere that's not here. So I don't know the science that they're using.
But that's exactly it, though. Whatever it is, it's friggin' easy. That's the thing. We're trying to make this complex because we don't understand it, right? Whatever it is, it's easy. Richard, you driving across town with GPS, right? After the show tonight to go and get Tracy and you some burgers from a 24-hour burger stand across the other side of Rochester, and you're going to come back with root beer floats, hot fries, and burgers in 30 minutes, and you're going to do a 20-mile round trip. Well,
Sure, right.
tell that to somebody 200 years ago.
Yeah, exactly
And
right.
they would look at you like it's some kind of black magic sorcery.
Yeah, you know what? You're so right. One of the greatest, most creative writers in American history was Edgar Allan Poe, right? And I mean, the guy had an imagination. Like, you got to give him that. And he died in, I think it was 1848 or 49, somewhere around that. Too young. He was too young. So toward the end of his life, he wrote this little piece of fiction called Melantonta or something like that. So it takes place 1,000 years in the future. So in the year 2848, 2848 is when he sets it. And it's a series of communications from a person who is traversing in the most advanced form of transportation at that time. And that form of transportation was high altitude, high speed balloons. So 1,000 years, and this is Edgar Allan Poe. The guy had a tremendous imagination. He's looking into the future 1,000 years, and he comes up with balloons because that's what he knew. Now, I mean, he was, in a sense, that was almost like a political commentary. He's kind of a satire, but even so, 1,000 years ahead, Edgar Allan Poe gives you balloons. So we don't, our ability to predict, none of the greatest sci-fi writers of the 20th century predicted the internet. Not Philip K. Dick, not Isaac Asimov. They didn't see the internet. Not really.
Arthur C. Clarke.
No, they were geniuses, all of them. They couldn't see something as radical, groundbreaking as the internet. So what you're saying, I get it, man. I mean, there are going to be revolutions scientifically coming ahead. And, you know, a lot of, I mean, I've been looking at the world very pessimistically lately. It's true. But I can't see the breakthroughs that undoubtedly are there. I can't see those. All I can do is I'm looking ahead in our near future, the next few generations, at a system of control that I don't like to see. That really bothers me. But it's true. Like there's potential breakout technology of all kinds that I just can't imagine it right now. So that gives hope.
It's got to be. It has to be as easy as anything that you're thinking about right now. Whatever it is, the easy thing that you can think of, right? Some easy thing. How natural is it? And I know this sounds so fundamental today to say, but we need to not let loose of this. How crazy is it that you can be driving in your car and you go, I need to call, I got to call my friend in Zimbabwe. Right? And just, what's up? Right? How crazy. I mean, that is just, but wait a minute. It's like, Jimmy, that is the stupidest thing. It's easy to do. We just do it. Well, when ET says, you don't get it, man. It's easy. It's for us to come here and hang out with you. We just do it, just like you going to get those burgers. You know, it's just what you know, and it's got to be, and it's going to be something so fundamental. It probably doesn't even involve math, right?
There's an old wonderful song from the 30s. What's the name of it? Billie Holiday was one singer of it. The line in there, the difficult I'll do right now. The impossible will take a little while. That's the line. And yeah, that's them. I mean, they've figured out, obviously they figured out all kinds of things that we haven't yet. So yeah, we will. And the process of figuring these things out will definitely change human society and will change the human species. And we will adapt to meet those changes. That's our evolution.
And here's the crazy part. And this is how Elon Musk comes into this conversation.
Right.
Because in 2020, Elon Musk was worth $25 billion. That's it. Today, he's worth over $300 billion.
I thought it was like 240, 250.
Dude, come on, man.
Yeah, whatever.
It doesn't matter, right?
Doesn't matter. Yeah, no, right.
So, and in the span of somebody that just turned 50, right? He controls space. He controls batteries and solar powers in the electric car market. He's driving all forms. He's digging tunnels.
He is Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Like he is the real Bruce Wayne.
So quickly. So. And then, he wakes up last month and goes, you know what? I think I'm going to buy the internet. It's just like,
you're going somewhere with us. So where are you going with us?
My point is, Elon Musk taking control of a company. Now, Twitter, we can look at Facebook with 3 billion, or we could look at Apple, or we could look at Amazon and server farms and different aspects of the internet. But nobody is going to tell you that global change or politics or breaking news happened on Facebook, right? That it happened on whatever, pick the platform. Twitter is that platform, and not only for communication, but for social change, for ideas, and what governments use to announce things. It's a crazy platform for a man that already controls so many other aspects of our lives to wrestle control of. And he did do that. Is this dangerous, or is this something that is okay?
It could be either of those. I mean, of course it could be dangerous. But of course, Twitter had already done damage in a lot of ways to the political discourse. I know some people may disagree with that, but it's my opinion. So I think with Musk, our system is so dysfunctional. We don't have a functioning democratic political system. We just really don't. And so Twitter, I think it came down to the fact that the world's richest man had to take control of this to say, yes, I believe in freedom of expression, freedom of speech. The fact that Twitter, if he is able to do that, he's got his work cut out for him, because the first person who gets killed due to some threat from Twitter, the hammer's going to come down. I mean, you could even see a repeal of Section 230, which is the whole thing that has allowed free speech on the internet. There are people who really want to take 230 down. A lot of Republicans and Democrats both want to take 230 down. And what that basically does, it means like if something bad happens on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, you can't sue Facebook. You can't sue Twitter. They're platforms. And but there are people who want to remove that protection. A lot of Republicans were ticked off under Trump because they were saying, these organizations are acting like publishers when they're supposed to be platforms, therefore they should lose their 230 status. But there are also politicians who want to eliminate 230 altogether. And two of them are named Biden and Trump. Both of them have been. So you've got the last two presidents want 230 gone. And I don't know if it's for the same reasons or different reasons or whatever, but they both want it gone. And so if it goes away, you'll immediately see all the platforms immediately close ranks because they got to protect against lawsuits. So the internet will totally change. But right now, Musk, back to him, if he's able, through some miracle, to keep Twitter as a genuinely open platform, that's actually going to be really interesting. And it's interesting for UFOs as everything else, because what you had before was all of the big tech platforms, Google, Twitter, Facebook, and all the subsidiary ones, Instagram and whatever, like essentially closing the spigots and working on behalf of Congress and their insanity about Russia, and like, you can't say this, you got to do this, and you have to censor this. And they were all doing that. And it's collusion. But if one of those majors breaks ranks, and Twitter might break ranks, that makes it very difficult. So it really does open up things in a way that I didn't see opening up. I don't think anyone saw. So that's a potentially good sign. How long it will last, I have no idea. That's a nice. Maybe they won a battle, but I'm not sure that means they're going to win the war. But in the near term, it will open up political discourse radically, potentially, and it's going to be an interesting year. The UFO part will be affected because UFOs. Here's the thing that every one of us needs to remember about the UFO subject. We don't want to say this, but it's true. The UFO subject is dangerous. It's dangerous. It's destabilizing. It's politically subversive. Like, it is all of those things. And, I understand when Lou Elizondo will, he's got to be very careful. And he'll say these very relatively, he's put a lot of things out there. I want to give him full credit, but he's still very careful. He's got his own clearances he's got to worry about. And so a lot of people in public will play along with the fiction. Well, we wonder what's out there. I don't think they wonder at all. They know exactly. And the fact is that the cover-up that's occurred is, do you want to get technical? It's criminal. So when you get into the depth of the UFO subject, you really go into the depth of it. It is absolutely subversive to the power structure of our world. That's a fact. And so what that means is you have to expect that all of the censorship and all of the hammers that are coming down on free speech everywhere, that will apply to the UFO subject. In fact, we know that it already is applying to the UFO subject, but it will continue to. So the UFOs will be safe to talk about as long as it's not political, as long as it's not conspiratorial. You start going into serious political and conspiratorial analysis of UFOs. No, that's not going to be happening. And I think as time goes by, it's going to be more and more difficult for UFO research to go into those very necessary but uncomfortable areas that deal with the cover-up, the conspiracy. That's a real thing. There is a real conspiracy. And we've been hammered for years now with this idea that conspiracy theories are for silly people. Conspiracy theory, like you hear this all the time. It's a serious damage. It does real damage to public discourse in every way. And it does damage to the UFO field because people run away from it. They're afraid. They don't want to be smeared as a conspiracy theorist. But the UFO cover-up is a conspiracy. And the UFO subject fundamentally is a dangerous subject to social order. I wish it weren't. I don't like the fact that it is, but it's the fact. So, the facts don't care what I think. It is what it is. And so therefore, opening up something like Twitter, at least in the near term, for something like the UFO field, that's a healthy thing. I think that's a good thing.
Is it okay to, and the advocates of, pure free speech, I don't think they understand really what they're speaking about, especially when it comes to private companies. But is it okay to lie? Right? So under the guise of free speech, to post a lie. So
there's always there's always things that are, you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, and you can't engage in slander or libel. Those are actionable. So if you're talking like that, there are laws to deal with things like that. Always happen.
But with a private platform, a private platform, this has nothing to do with the federal government or free speech. A private platform, a private company is a totally different situation where it could be okay to yell fire in a crowded theater. And so where does that oversight come from?
Yeah, well, there's that. You're right. But we're leaving out a few things here. So one is that all those private platforms, in terms of what they are limiting on the platform, have been coming from extreme political pressure. That's one thing. So they've come at the behest of political members of Congress, primarily, and the government, and what we even might call the deep state. That's a real thing. So those have had extreme influence over those platforms. That's been PayPal just now. And it's not just against right-wing people. Like we tend to think that PayPal, just listen to a story today. They're going after a bunch of left of center progressives and preventing them from being able to use PayPal for what clearly are political motivations. And it's like these activists, these thinkers, they're simply skeptics of the U.S. government and a lot of international things, probably including the Russia-Ukraine thing, war going on there. But it doesn't matter. PayPal is going after them. Why? Why would a private business? Yes, you could say PayPal's allowed to. Doesn't make business sense. Clearly, they're doing it as a result of political pressure. All these major companies are doing that. So when you see political pressure going against big tech, I think we have to ask ourselves, okay, we're talking, yes, a private platform has the right to regulate its speech within that, but in the real world, if we're seeing all of this overt government and intelligence community influence over these platforms, I think the public has a right to object to that. Certainly. I'm not a lawyer, but there's got to be something illegal. There's something sketchy about that. And then secondly, if you have platforms that want to restrict speech, okay, fine. That is their right. In theory, people should be allowed to start alternative platforms. The problem with that is that when there were alternative platforms at various times that started up, you saw tremendous amounts of pressure and direct action taken against them to destabilize and destroy those alternative platforms. Now, they're not all destroyed, but some of them have been. Everyone remembers Parler. So no, there's something wrong there. Like, yes, private companies have that right, but when they are acting to enforce monopoly in areas where those private platforms have, in a sense, de facto become public squares anyway, in practice. So there's a lot of issues at play here that I don't think it really is satisfactory to just say, yeah, they're private companies, they can do what they want. It's not that simple. So I agree with you in theory, but I think the reality is a little more complex.
Yeah, I think it's just something that we need to at least discuss, which is if the world's most richest, most popular right person now wrestles control of a media outlet that he owns stock in companies. He's got his own companies. He's got his own influence, and he can turn around and steer the narrative. You're talking about
at the worst comes to worst, he'll destroy it as a brand, and people will leave it, and they'll go somewhere else. Like there's always that possibility. I don't even know if Elon Musk has the power to destroy, like really to destroy all the competitive brands that may come up. He'll only be able to succeed if he actually has a product that people really like to keep using. And if he fails to do that, then he'll succeed if he's able to strong arm, use government support to block any competitors, which is kind of what Twitter had been sort of doing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like using really unfair government leverage to prevent competitors from succeeding. But if Musk really screws it up and if he turns Twitter into some awful place, well, people, I think, will just leave it. They'll go somewhere else.
And here's the thing. I really like Elon. Dude smokes weed. He wants to go to Mars. He's got rocket ships.
And he's a genius. He's a genius.
What's not to love? But
there are issues.
Control. Yeah, I mean,
there are issues. I mean, first of all, he's like, I'm afraid of AI taking over, so we have to become like AI. I'm like, oh crap, man. That's it. Maybe he's right. I don't like that answer.
He buys a platform run by AI. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
It's a little strange. Richard,
he's got to have been read into something. I think he's got to have been read into something.
He smokes weed and he loves aliens. So there you go. Hey, Richard, another great conversation, my friend.
It is time. Well, I hope that the interview has met or exceeded your expectations. I will say I enjoyed this very much. I hope
I always do.
Enjoyed it as well. A lot of fun.
I'm not going to bother you.
Chat people.
Absolutely. I'm not going to bother you about the new book. Now, tomorrow, get back
I'm working on it, though.
Yeah, get back to writing.
I'm working on it.
See, this is me. Watch. I'm holding my breath. Richard, have a great night. Have a great night, man.
Thank you,
Give my best to Tracy, and I hope she feels better. And we'll chat. We'll chat later on this week, man. Thank you so much.
It was a real pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Richard Bleepin Dolan. There it is. The interview. Absolutely incredible conversation tonight. Thank you so much, Richard. And it's so funny. Earlier tonight, I told Tracy, I said, I'm going to keep your man up. He's running late. And she goes, Jimmy, he's all yours. So I knew I had a free run tonight. Thank you so much, Richard Dolan. And it is richarddolanmembers.com. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Dennison, Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark T. Kovar. Webmasters, Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJC over the Game Changer Network. This broadcast only copyrighted 2022 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night is Fader night. It's open lines all night long. Until then, you'll see the guitars tomorrow night. I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.